Okay, so my hero's journey begins at the age of 14. I'm accepted into the LaGuardia High School of Music, Art, and Performing Arts as a major in visual arts. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm going to be around talented kids on the same wavelength. But as it turned out to be much more difficult than I originally thought. The academic workload and the artistic workload were intense, and it seemed like the other kids were breezing by. I felt that they were more intelligent, more talented, and more interesting than I was, and I was just totally broken. To make matters worse, I was infatuated with this girl named Geraldine, and I felt that she was way out of my league. And whenever she approached me, I would get very bristly and cold because I just wanted to push her away because I didn't want her to, know how I felt about her. Uh, One of the better experiences at the high school was I submitted to the school paper a short story I wrote called Carnal Ingestion 101, which was about a kid who enrolls in a class where he has to eat human flesh. So it goes in the paper, and everyone thinks it's hilarious. And they come up to me, "Great job, man. You did an incredible job. You're really talented." So I felt validated. So I also find the courage to approach Geraldine and say, "Hey, look, I really have feelings for you. I'm sorry I kept pushing you away. Can we go on a date?" And she said, "Well, that's great, but I'm already seeing someone, and he's inviting me to the senior prom." So I try to play it cool. I'm like, "Hey, great, that's good. Good for you. Congratulations." And but inside, I'm totally crestfallen. But time goes on. I graduate from LaGuardia. I move on to Hunter College, and I major in film. I decide I'm going to make a film version of Carnal Ingestion 101. And the teacher's like, "Yeah, great, go for it, man." And as a matter of fact, there's a contest, there's a student film festival coming up. You should submit your film. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take it on." But the problem was I'm a perfectionist. And I just, crossed every T, dotted every I, and I worked it and I worked it and I worked it, and it was never to my satisfaction. So I missed the deadline for the film festival. And Mick was like, "What the hell happened, man? Why didn't you submit it?" And I was like, it just wasn't good enough. And I tried to be cool about it, but I was still, crestfallen. So again, time goes on. I graduate with a major in film. I take a job at a small film production company in Chelsea as an editor, and I'm doing actors' reels, and I'm shooting depositions for legal firms. But the work is hard. I give it my all. But unfortunately, the company came across some tough times financially, and they had to cut corners, and I was one of the corners cut. So on top of this, I got married to a very beautiful woman, Susan. But we both had to get serious. We both had to find jobs. So I took a civil service test, and I got a job as a civilian member of service for the New York Police Department. And the first place they assigned me was the roll call office, which is like the nerve center of a precinct. You have to know who's going to be paired off with whom, who's doing what shift, and when their lunch is, and so forth, and other assignments. And I had the hell of a time keeping up with everything. I couldn't. Day after day, it just got worse and worse. Till I turned to my principal and said, "Look, could you give me a job elsewhere in the precinct?" And he said, "Okay, we'll put you into complaints." And while I found complaints easier, I was still miserable. During this time, a friend of mine turned me on to a class in screenwriting at the YMCA, and I was like, perfect. Writing, film, that's what I want to do with my life. So I enroll, I get into the class, and the first day, the instructor, Charlie, gives me the best advice I could ever hear, and that was, give yourself the right to fail. So I completely forgotten about Carnal Ingestion, so I'm looking for an idea for a script, and I'm a big mythology fan, So I come across this book on mythology about a figure named Inanna, and I'm totally entranced with her story about her ascent to royalty, her downfall, her ordeal in the underworld, and her rise to become wiser and a better ruler. So I totally identified with that, and I started writing a script about it. And for 5 long years, I worked and banged away at it until finally Charlie, the instructor, said, "Hey, you know what? You're doing a great job. You should do a reading of your script with actors in the theater at the YMCA." And I said, "Yeah, good. I'm good for that." And we start getting the actors together, so on and so forth. I come home to tell my wife the good news, but then I get cold feet, and I'm like, "Honey, I don't think the script is ready. I don't think the script is finished." She just she just shook her head, smiled at me, and said, "Honey, it's finished." And my hero's journey is far from over.